Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Skylar Henry.
And I'm Mallory Safaste. Here at ABC2, we're working for you, and tonight we're bridging the gap, recognizing those who shaped our history and those who are making history of their own. We start with Julian Jones.
Yeah, he's the first African-American ranking officer with the Anne Arundel County Fire Department and the first African-American Baltimore County Council chair, and hopes someday soon these milestones become standards.
Pray for our children. They need our prayers. They need our love.
Praise and worship at New Antioch Baptist Church is when you'll undoubtedly meet Julian Jones. He never misses a Sunday and never misses a chance to meet with those he loves, his people.
It's good to be able to help people, especially people who have, run into roadblocks. And this job, fortunate enough, gives me the type of access where a lot of times I can make a phone call and really make a difference for somebody.
By Julian's side, his wife, kids, and his grandchildren. A commitment to family instilled in him by his father, his namesake. To know Julian is to know the man who stood by his side at almost every milestone.
Nothing was more important than his family. My father worked 2 jobs for as long as I can remember. He loved his family. Died about 12 years ago. It's not a day I don't think about him.
It's a vulnerable spot for Julian. His dad was left to fend for himself at just 8 years old. And because of that, he made sure all of his kids knew the value of family. And beyond that, your community.
I always was involved in my community. I was a PTA president for years. And I decided that I thought that I had something to offer the community, so I decided to run for office.
Before becoming a councilman in Baltimore County, Julian was Anne Arundel County's first African-American ranking officer with the fire department, initially using an entry job there to pay his way through college.
They were starting to pay with like $18,963, I still remember. And I thought, why not? I'll give it a try.
After graduating with a degree in information systems management, Julian decided to stick around the firehouse, rising in rank and responsibility.
The first part is to know that you can do it, that it can be done. And then from there, it's just a matter of laying out the steps and working hard to that goal.
Hard work and a lingering feeling of work needing to be done led Julian to run for office. After 2 goes at a council seat in Baltimore County, he landed in a position where he says he's affecting more people than he ever has. And it's pushed him to the role of chairman. Yet again, the first African American to ever do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jones is your chairman for 2018.
Some people, they have to see it to believe that they can achieve it. They have to see people that look like them in positions where they feel like they can do it.
An inspiration, Julian says, he found from his faith, his fellowship, and his family. Mallory, we're so lucky to be in Baltimore with the entertainment venues that we have here.
So lucky.
Yeah.
And did you know that Baltimore is home to the oldest continuously operating African-American community theater in the United States? Since 1953, the Arena Players have entertained, educated, and served the Baltimore community.
The Arena Players, 1953.
The group started out of a passion for performing.
They had this creative outflow, and there was nowhere they could do it. The theater's then very segregated, and the only way you would get a stage role is if you were playing a butler or a servant.
It was a community effort, as it remains today. A message Donald Owens shares before every big show.
It's your institution. You cannot expect someone else to save it. You cannot expect someone else to preserve it.
Nor drink, nor money have I none. They're also inspirations for the young kids attending the 6-week intensive summer program. For Owens, he's continuing history, passing on his heritage. For the kids who come through here, they're laying the groundwork for a professional career, maybe in theater or something else. Just like the Arena Players that came before them, they too can play the role of whoever they desire.
And there are others creating art today that will transform the future.
That's right. Kyle Yearwood is one of these people, transforming a negatively perceived H&M ad into a symbol of black royalty.
Instead of boycotting, as some suggested, he chose to use his unique style of art to create an image of empowerment.
Well, the first thing I wanted to do was remove the coolest monkey in the jungle and just switch it to something more empowering. You know, I placed the crown on his head and I put royalty and the Ankh symbol just as a reminder to black people and all people that, you know, we didn't evolve from monkeys, we evolved from kings and queens.
Kyle considers his art a representation of black excellence and uses his craft to shape the reality that he wants to see. Art can transform your life. Irv Phillips shares his creativity in photographs.
Yeah, photography is in his blood. Both his father and son share his same passion for capturing those sweet moments.
Starlight Arena.
Capturing moments is what Irv Phillips does.
And that's the whole point about taking pictures. You stop that moment of history forever.
It's what his father did. And the knack for pictures is what Irv passed on to his son.
Because a lot of places you go will never happen again. Only happened at one time. Here's Paul Rose from Pickett & Ford's Theater.
With racism pressuring the longtime photographer, Phillips says he learned to keep his composure in the midst of a new opportunity.
But then I went to the Sun in '69. They had like a Soul Day or something at the stadium, and it was hard for them to cover it. They didn't have any blacks on the staff, right? So they decided to hire black. You know what I mean? They always tried to mess with us, try to make us look bad or put you in the back or somewhere, you know what I mean? But you had to fight through all of that stuff, you know? Oh, this is Lexington Market, colored and white.
Phillips has shot thousands of photos, but the moments he's missed are the ones he says he'll never forget.
Well, one time, here's the story. One time I was watching Paul Blais. I had a 400. Guy hit the ball, he'll turn his back on it, run, then look back and no right. But I didn't push the shutter. And I went back to the office and I didn't have the picture. I was watching him and I didn't push the shutter. Very seldom in my life I've ever done that. Stevie Wonder and Whoopi Goldberg.
Phillips' work has taken him all over the world.
Oh, here's my father right here.
But he credits his father and the Afro, an African-American newspaper, for his firm foundation.
Oh, I wouldn't be who I am, you know, without him and working for the Afro. But they all stood for something. You know, what King say, stand for something, fall for anything? They really stood for something. The Afro was educating black folks, and we had the responsibility of being out there and recording that history, you know, truthfully.
A footpath to freedom. The Underground Railroad was a network of stations, safe places for runaway slaves to stop in their ultimate quest for liberty.
Yeah, they mostly traveled at night, sometimes 20 miles per trek.
Yeah, the stars were their guide, but it was families along the way that gave them the necessary shelter.
Tonight, the story about one of the families that ran a safe house in Baltimore County, how they risked their lives for others, and the latest family who continues their traditions.
The success of this house was rooted in how well it blended in. A well-known family that contributed to the community was also hiding a secret.
He used to hide them in his barrels, either roll them down Stumpy Lane or load them on his wagon, depending on the weather conditions, and haul them up to the safe house.
Jeff and Shirley Supik are the current owners of Pierpont Safe House, and they're talking about the owners that came generations before them, the Emmerts, who would hide slaves in this Baltimore County house during the day, then help guide them along the Underground Railroad at night.
We became the 7th generation to own the home, and all the 6 before us were related by blood. We're the first that weren't related. So we tell everyone we bought our first home and inherited a legacy.
The Supiks see themselves in the Emmerts. They want to do something for others, and they found their calling in sharing this home's history.
So they had a symbol. And when you opened the basement door, you reached in, you felt that symbol, and you knew you had reached a safe place.
A station along the Underground Railroad, a safe haven, constructed around 1791. The house was moved twice, finally landing here, where the Supiks took it over in 1980. They wanted to renovate the house, make it their own, but they were forced to close it off to everyone after a termite eradication went bad. To keep the county from tearing down this piece of history, they decided to go public with its past.
So they started prayer vigils. Then Towson says, we're getting support from all over the country, phone calls, emails, letters. What do we do now? Somebody says, make it a landmark. So that's what we did.
They learned something from that experience. They didn't choose the house chose them.
If the house calls, we go. I mean, that's how it is. This is bigger than he and I. It's bigger than you and he and I. It's history. It's bigger than all of us. And we need to promote the history. We cannot forget the things that truly made us great.
She has a pure appreciation of history, one she shares in packed rooms, outside the property, at various festivals, and with anyone who will listen.
A safe house is hope. The Underground Railroad was hope. It wasn't about slavery. It was about people working together of all colors, of all ages, of all nationalities to do the right thing. That's what we need today.
The Supiks are trying to fundraise $350,000 to fully renovate so they can reopen the house and add another room for meetings and learning seminars.
Yeah, if you'd like to contribute or learn more about the Emmert-Pierpont Safe House, visit abc2news.com/Black History Month.
I had to create this body of work to talk about America's violent history against today's sort of violence. And that's really the only way that we can reckon with what's going on today.
Still ahead on Bridging the Gap, bringing the past to the present using quilts.
I consider it an opportunity to make a difference and to make sure I open up doors for other African Americans who are coming behind me.
And paving the way is exactly what Calvin Butler is doing in his role with BGE. You're watching Bridging the Gap.
He's one of only a handful of African-American CEOs in a Fortune 100 company. You may not recognize his name or face,
but you definitely know the company. BGE, as the company's first leader of color, he's on a mission to take the utility giant to a place it's never been before. You've undoubtedly been affected by his decisions. BGE's top executive is constantly working.
So I always had that view that if I was going to do it, I was going to be all in and be the best at it, or why do it? And that's just carried forward in everything I've tried to do.
Calvin Butler Jr., the company's first African-American CEO, is blazing a trail, even if he doesn't consider himself a pioneer.
I get the accolades, but it's truly about this team. Over the last 4 years, man, we've reshaped our leadership team for the better, I think.
But before those years, Calvin's work started in Peoria, Illinois. The law school grad, hungrier for something other than work inside of a courtroom, sought more.
I was driving into work, traveling south. I saw a 7-year associate walking to the office. It's not even 7 a.m. yet. He looked miserable. And I made the determination, I said, that's not what I want to do for the rest of my life.
So Calvin's work and relationships took him to a utility company in Peoria, a company that ultimately groomed him for corporate leadership. Then came the opportunity that changed his life, a near 800-mile journey to Baltimore that allowed him to be in play for a chance to lead Maryland's largest gas and electric utility.
My wife and I, we talked about it, and we stepped out on faith. We came here knowing that I may not get the top job, but that was my goal.
And with time, the goal became reality. On the pillars of his St. Louis roots, love from parents that wanted him to win, and a drive and desire to not only set a good example, but be a shining light in the eyes of his mother.
The driving force for me early on, and I own this, I wanted to make my mother proud. I saw how hard she worked to give me the opportunities, and I wanted to make her proud.
In his time as CEO, Calvin has met game changers and the country's 43rd and 44th presidents. But one of his biggest legacies is creating lasting relationships with his community.
What I consider myself is blessed to be in the position that I'm in, and I consider it an opportunity to make a difference and to make sure I open up doors for other African Americans who are coming behind me.
A blueprint for a lot of people that Calvin says is not only changing his company, but creating results.
So when people tell me diversity doesn't matter, I say, look at my numbers. Our numbers reflect the power of diverse perspectives and of diverse leadership styles because we're delivering time in and time out.
Calvin and BGE have also made significant contributions to West Baltimore, chipping in on the new Eddie Murray Field at BGE Park.
As for where he sees the company going in the future, he says he's just getting started.
A local artist took a look at the violent history of America's past to find answers to its questions about the violence of today.
Using a unique medium, he brings the past to the present.
Stephen Towns. I started doing art when I think 5 years old, actually really young. I felt like it was the best way for me to communicate. I've been working on a series of quilts around Nat Turner's Rebellion. It's been a story that I have been researching for about 6 years now. I did it because experiencing the uprising, I started to wonder about violence and how we talk about violence in the news, in history books, and what I've learned from all my research from history is that America has had a very violent past, and so for me, I had to create this body of work to talk about America's violent history against today's sort of violence, and that's really the only way that we can reckon with what's going on today. I drew out some ideas to talk about a baptism that Nat Turner did. And I tried drawing out the idea, I tried painting the idea, and it just never worked. And so I finally decided that it's something that I had to quilt. It's large, it's expansive, and it's a tradition that has been used by African Americans for centuries. I didn't know how to sew. I learned sewing actually through YouTube, watching a lot of YouTube videos and tutorials. This was a very pivotal important event in Nat Turner's life. He was baptizing this white man, and it was something that wasn't supposed to be done. And I feel like what I've done, incorporating that figure and incorporating Turner is going to tell the story well. Nat Turner's Rebellion was something that I didn't learn in school. It just sort of blew me away, this story, this very violent story. But it did lead to the Civil War, and it did actually eventually lead to the freeing of the slaves. When I've displayed my work in places, I've had my work taken down. I've had people become very uncomfortable with my work. So there's always sorts of challenges when you're talking about race and racism in America's history, especially at such a turbulent time. But I feel like it's the time to talk about it until we sort of face this history and face it in an honest way. Then we are bound to repeat it over and over and over again. So you always have to check the stitches from the front and the back. Making quilts is hard. Making a body of work is hard. And for me, it felt like I felt justification in making the work as soon as a work would be completed. I'm not an expert, but I'm making nice, beautiful things, and it's good to be praised on it and have people see it.
You can see Stephen Towns' artwork up close in person at the Baltimore Museum of Art. His Rumination and Reckoning exhibit will run from March 7th through September 2nd. Louis Diggs is a man with many titles. He's been called a teacher, historian, and veteran.
But if you ask him, he'll just tell you that he's a man who likes to write.
My name is Louis Diggs, born and raised in Baltimore City.
One of 5 children, Louis Diggs' father abandoned him and his siblings at an early age. His mother, who he considers a strong black woman, didn't care about anything else but doing the best she could to raise her kids.
I decided to quit school in 1950. I wasn't going to go back. I had actually passed to 11th grade, but I joined the National Guard. It's a black unit in Baltimore that's been there since the 1800s. Joined it June the 5th, 1950, day before the war was going to break out. 20 days later, and we got hung up. They ordered them to active duty. I was fortunate to have participated in the war.
After 20 years in the military, he retired and began teaching at then Morgan College, turning young men into ranking officers through the school's ROTC program. Then he fell in love with writing.
I wrote my first book. It was called It All Started on Winter's Lane, and I did this about 27 years ago.
Lewis found out there were 40 black communities throughout Baltimore County that were designated historic. He then wrote 10 more books on those communities. Then he was honored by his own.
Sincerest congratulations to Jake Oliver as the recipient of the Lewis S. Diggs Award.
Give me great honors by designating an award in my name. I want black children to know that they have a history. If somebody from the ghettos now that say there's no way out, if you just take a peek at what I've done, I don't think nobody was lower than my family.
Year after year, we aim to tell the stories of unsung heroes who have used their lives and experiences to bridge the gap.
For more stories highlighting the importance of this month, visit our website at abc2news.com/Black History Month.
We thank you for joining us this evening and remind you to ask yourself the question, how will I bridge the gap?